What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be going over how we can set up match flow part 2. So basically we're going to be going through some more of our fixes and more of our functionality regarding the match state and match flow, and how we can track it and use it to make our game better, more customizable, and have more of an actual purpose to the different states of the game mode. So if we take a look at the match state, we had stage intro, character entrances, match begin, match active. And now we're going to have a few other ones that we've added as well. So we can go ahead and beat up our opponent here. And once the opponent is defeated, it goes the round over. When the round is finished and the new round begins, it goes back to match active. That is all working as intended, and that was set up in the previous episode. But we had some other match states that we never set up or never finished setting up. We're going to set them up today, and we're also going to update some of the functionality to work with some of the old existing functionality, like round one, character victory, like this, match results, and match 1 functionality. Also, assuming we rematch, it will go to character 1 entrance and character 2 entrance now to separate them, in case you'd like to do some things like skip them separately, because skipping the character entrances could be per player, like player 1 has to skip theirs and player 2 has to skip theirs. So we're going to go over basically the finalization of setting the match states, and we're going to go over some updates to our round win, match win functions to allow them to be dictated more by the game mode and less by the characters. We're going to have at least one more match flow episode after this to wrap up some more things that I noticed that I wanted to cover, but this is a step in the right direction. So if you'd like to get caught up in the series before we get started, you can go ahead and click this icon in the top right corner to check out the playlist and every episode we've done to date for the fighting game tutorial series. Otherwise, you can click this episode right here, which is Match Flow and Match States Part 1, so you can see how we set up the Enum and how we got the majority of the logic working for this system. Alright, and now let's get started. So let's go into our code again, and let's go back to our fighter template game mode. So the first thing I want to look at is updating our eMatch state Enum to have these new values. So I have character 1 entrance and character 2 entrance now. I did talk about this before in the previous episode, saying how you could separate them, but you don't have to. I decided it would probably be better to separate them. That way you could skip 1 and 2 if you'd like. And also if you have dialogue that is related to specific character interactions and not just default character entrances, then knowing what character you are and what line should be said is also useful here. And these other ones were used. The only one we don't actually use by the end of today is the character defeat, and that is because we don't have a character defeat animation or little sequence that plays, but I know some games do, and you definitely could. So you would just have to set this one basically the same way we set character victory would work. And now let's go down and let's add some functions here. So we had a match 1 function, and that was basically used to determine when a match was won by an indicated player, and we pass in the winning character so we know what character won and what to do with them. I'm also going to update this and add a round 1 function, because the rounds and the matches should be basically dictated by the game mode. So the flow of who's winning, who's losing, how many rounds have to be won should be dictated by the game mode. That's really the proper place to do it, not on the character. And so I'd like to move as much logic as possible over here to the game mode to make our lives easier in the future, and to also just better our code and our project, because that is an ongoing process and that should always be done when possible, even if it works the other way. So I make this round 1 function that is blueprint callable. Doesn't have to be in this case, but I'm just sticking with the theme of making these guys blueprint callable. I pass in a fighter template character pointer, so basically our base character class. I call it winning character. Set equal to null pointer by default. If it's null pointer, we can assume that it was a tie, in which case we can go ahead and do separate logic for that. Now we can go to fighter template game mode CPP, and let's go up to the top. We can scroll down here to where our match 1 function is, and I'm going to write round 1 right above it. So in round 1, I have all this logic right here. So let's go into our fighter template character before going any farther, and we can scroll down, or you can search for it. I'm going to search for it because there are a lot of functions here. I'm going to go to round 1, and I'm going to search in the current document, and we're going to go to this logic right here. Okay, so in the take damage function for the character, when they take hit, we have this boolean that determines if the character was defeated from the damage dealt by that hit. If they were, toward the bottom of the function, I have some logic to check if they're defeated, and then if they are, we were calling other player win round. So basically, for the player that had won, we're calling the win round function in the character class. We no longer need to be doing that. Instead, I'm using this new method. So I'm going to get rid of the comment here, and instead we're going to do this. So basically, if this character is defeated from the hit, then we check and see if the game mode is valid. Get this reference to it by using this if statement. So basically, if this evaluates to the game mode and it can cast successfully to this type right here, then this will evaluate properly. It will be a reference to our game mode, and then we want to call the round 1 function on it. Remember, we need to pass in a winning character when possible. So we're going to pass in other player because this character was defeated from the hit. So other player is the winner. Okay, so that's how we can change our function call to now work through the game mode instead of the character class, and that's good. Let's go to our win round function in the character. This is in the fighter template character. We have this win round function. And this was where we were doing our logic for when a round was won. So we were determining what happens to the losing player, what happens to the winning player, or rather the winning and losing characters. And we were even calling the match 1 function from here. And this is fine, it was working, but really this stuff should be handled by the game mode. So I've commented out these lines here, and the reason for this is we're going to do them in the game mode function now. So if we go to the fighter template game mode, we can go to our round 1 function, and you can see it's going to be very similar to what we have in the character. We're going to check and see if the winning character is valid, and if it is, we can proceed with this. We need it to be valid, that way we can call these functions and grab these variables from it. And now we're going to just go down the list here, and I'm going to relate them to the character class. So I've commented out some things here. Let's go one line at a time. So we're getting a game mode reference. That won't be necessary in the fighter template game mode, but it was necessary here because we had to make sure the game mode was valid before using anything in it. Okay? So we call the character function here. Winning character, win round. This is okay. Even though I'm saying the round 1 logic should be done in the game mode, and I believe that, it's okay to do logic specific to the character in the character class when the match was won. So you can leave this, and you can still call this function. So we want to call win round on the winning character. That is something we should do when the round has been won, and the game mode knows that. So we call this function, and now we have to determine what parts we want to leave in here. So the one thing I'm going to leave in here for now is basically setting the other player to have lost the round. This determines things like if they can get up, if they can act freely, or if they're knocked out, so if they can cancel out of combos and things like that. So if the other player is not already set to has lost round, we're going to set them to has lost round. So has lost round equals true. This is something we were doing in the previous episodes. Nothing you have to add. I'm just showing you. This I'm still doing. I'm also still incrementing the rounds won by the character. The character itself has a rounds won boolean. This is because I think this character should keep track of this. This will change a little bit when we get into tag matches because the teams will have like a combined rounds won. But really the process is the same. So I think the rounds won for the character and what character has lost the round, setting this boolean, are both things that can stay in the win round function. But let's look at the rest of this logic here. We already covered this if statement. This is getting the game mode reference. Obviously, we don't need that in the fighter template game mode. But let's go to the next line that I have commented out here. If rounds 1 is equal to the game mode num rounds. Well, in the game mode function, round 1, we check to see if the winning character's rounds 1 are equal to the num rounds. I think this is better to do here because we want to call the match 1 logic directly from the game mode, as opposed to calling the game mode reference match 1 and determining who won the match from the character class. We can do it right from the game mode class here. And then we do have to pass in our winning character because match 1 also takes in a winning character. Okay. So you could delete this logic if you'd like. There's also 2 other things in here that shouldn't really be done in the character, so I've decided not to. I've done them in the game mode. And essentially what this is we have the winning character notifying the round end, which basically calls the blueprint game mode event to do blueprint logic for the round end. And then we also have this winning character update HUD round icons so that the character can update their icons on the HUD. Now, this could be done in the character and still be valid because it is only updating the round icons for the winning character. So I could see that still being useful. However, I do like doing it from the game mode because we can actually have a reference to the HUD in the game mode and we will be able to directly update that in the future. Technically, you could do it now, but if we ever had to update it more than just the round icons, like make more changes on the HUD as a character wins, I'm saying we would be able to do that from the game mode directly, which I believe is a much better spot than doing it from each individual character. So even though this is okay now in the fighter template character and it's valid, I would recommend moving that call to the game mode just to clean things up a little bit, expanding our abilities for the future with the game mode of the HUD interaction. So in the fighter template character win round, this is all I have now. Important note is that if you can't call some of these functions in the game mode, it's because these functions most likely are not set to be public. What I had to do was I had to go down to right here, the win round, win match functions, and I put public directly above it. This is going to make everything below that public type so they can be called. So you may not want to do that, or you may want to do that and put these back to what they were. Above it was protected. So these functions were protected, and these 2 are now public. And I can put protected again to make everything below this, all these other functions, protected again. So you can use these as much as you want. Again, these change the scopes and determine what classes and what variables will be able to access these and call these functions. So make sure at least the ones you're going to be calling are the right type. So in this case, I have to make sure notify round and update HUD round icons are also public. So if we look for them, you can see that they are now under protected, which we don't want. So I can either move these functions up to the public, or I can simply do this again. I do public. And then I could do protected. It really doesn't matter. Now, personally, I would actually organize these probably into just public, protected, and private and only have one of these, but just showing you that you have that freedom. Feel free to do with it as you'd like. But once that's done and you can actually call all these functions in your fighter template game mode, then you'll be good to go. Also looking here, you can see that rounds 1 is not able to be gotten. That's because the rounds 1 variable is private now as well. And so, like I said with the others, you could make it getter, or you could make this public and do protected after it. Okay, so you have a lot of freedom with this. Do with it as you please. Feel free to organize them more. We probably will be organizing them for when the template is released, but as far as the tutorial goes, it doesn't really matter how you do public, private, and protected, just as long as you're using them in a way that works for your game. Everything should work here, and you should be able to save and build. Now, there's also a small update I want to add to the match 1 function. we did set this up in previous episodes, but we can make this a little bit better. So one thing I want to do that I actually haven't done is before passing winning character into the trigger match win effects function, which all that function does is like slow down time, so it changes time dilation, and a few other additional things that we set up a while ago. What we should do is if winning character exists, then we'll do this, because this function does take in a winning character so that it can end up utilizing it in the future if needed. So we should check and see if winning character is the case here. Now, if winning character isn't the case, you could always just call trigger match win effects with no winning character and still perform logic. But I guess my point here is that it doesn't really matter what winning character is being used for within this function, since we are using it and it has the ability to be null pointer because we default it right here. A fighter template character winning character equals null pointer, meaning it can be null. We should check and make sure that it is valid before using it right here. Then I've also added the match state logic to set up the proper match state when the match is won. This is something I mentioned you could do in the previous episode, but we never actually showed it off, so here you go. When the match is won, we can go ahead and call match state equals, and then set it to match over. You could do this with the round over as well. It'd be very useful to do that. Right now I have that working off the game mode blueprint, and it works perfectly fine because of where we put it, but you could move them to code if you'd like as well. Okay, and before we exit the code here, I'm going to go to two other things and get them fixed up real quick. So in fighter template character.cpp, I'm going to get rid of these old bindings that I commented out in the previous episode because we no longer need them and I don't want to confuse anybody. So in setup player input component, we had moved all these character bindings over to the base player controller because we did not need these ones. I'm going to delete them. The setup player input component in the fighter template character is going to look like this from now on. Okay, so super simple function now, but I think that's the right thing to do to make it a little bit cleaner and avoid confusion. Then also in the base player controller.cpp, there's something else I want to do. So we have this setup input component function in here, which again, this is where we moved our logic that we just removed from that character over to. I want to get rid of this else because first of all, it's not needed. Okay, so clean that up. But also what I'd like to do is scroll down to perform start input logic. And now that we updated the match state to have character 1 entrance and character 2 entrance, like I showed off earlier, if you want to see it again, let me go to the game mode. See, I updated it and I have 2 character entrances now for player 1 and player 2, or team 1, team 2. Since they are different, we have to make sure we're checking for both of them, because the old standard E character entrance Enum won't exist anymore. So in the else if, where we were checking the game mode match state, see if it was equal to character entrance, just check if it's equal to character 1 entrance, copy this, and then check or if it's equal to character 2 entrance. And then we're going to call this skip character intros function, which we still have not set up in the blueprint. We just set up this basically shell of logic that we can end up setting up in the future. Okay. Now you're good to go with the code. So what we can do is go into the editor. We can open up our animation blueprint. Let's cover a few things in here first. So next thing we should do is set up our match states for the character entrances. So in the previous episode, we had this start character entrances Enum notify. Basically, as soon as we entered the entrance sequence, which is where the mutant roars, we were calling an event right here, entered state event, start entrance sequence. In that Enum notify that we put in the graph, all I was doing was this right here. We were going from the event and immediately calling set match state with character 1 entrance, or really character entrance as the value. But now we have to determine what character it is that is called this Enum Notify, or what team it is. That way we can then set the proper match state. So what I do is I still use the same Enum Notify, but I grab our character reference that we have. Get it? I check the isPlayer1 boolean. Remember, this is set in the fighter template character setup player input component function. IsPlayer1, IsPlayer2. By the way, while we're here, I actually missed these, but you can get rid of these comments as well. There you go. So this determines if we are player 1 or player 2 based on what the game mode knows is player 1 or player 2. And so we can check this, and we either have true or false, because you can either be player 1 or not be player 1. And then if you're player 1, we're going to set the match state to character 1 entrance. But if you're not, we're going to set it to character 2 entrance. Very, very simple stuff. Now, another thing we can do is the victory state and the defeat state if we had one. We don't have a match lost state or sequence, so we can't set that one yet. But we do have a match won state. And basically the character runs toward the camera in this case and gets right in the face of the camera. That's what this animation is all about. At the end of it, I had an M match 1, mutant match 1 Enum Notify. This isn't really necessary. We could just do it right off the state and not the specific animation. But since that's how I set it up in a previous episode, I'm not going to change it in today's episode. Just keep note of that one Enum Notify, and then keep note of the idle to match 1 state as a whole. That is this right here, this transition rule, where we check if we won the match. Not really important right now because we haven't made changes to that. But this transition rule right here should have an event on it. We're going to create a new one, and I'm calling it Start Character Victory. And this is very similar to the entrance logic. So once you put this in here, you'll be able to get this event in your event graph by typing in Start Character Victory and finding the event. It's going to bring up this node, in which case we want to set the match state equal to Character Victory. Now, let's go over to our match 1 Enum Notify that I was mentioning to you that was on the actual winning match animation for the mutant where he's running toward the camera. At this point, we have a delay, so once the match is won, we pop up the versus end pop-up widget and add it to the viewport. At that point, we want to set the match state to be match results. And after you've done this, we've set all the match states properly. They all track where the match is actually at, and that is incredibly useful. And with that, now we have this new logic. So we have updated round win, match win, and match state, match flow logic. And so what we can do is if we go to, say, this stage right here, and I need to go to the game mode, and you can see the match state down here. And you can see that it's setting properly with each one of these. And I will defeat my opponent by mashing the button, or I guess we could throw in some spice here. The fireball is very overpowered at the moment, so it does help me defeat the opponent very quickly. See, it goes to round over. Match active again. I've defeated the opponent, and now it's going to character victory, and it's going to go to match results. Alright, and now what we can do is test out our code functions to make sure they still work as intended as well. So I've actually set up a breakpoint in my round 1 function in the game mode. We're going to make sure that this triggers properly. Let's actually set up to... Well, we know that we actually know that the round 1 logic is functioning properly as far as the circles go, because they light up the proper color for the proper character when a match is won, or rather when a round is won. Now when the match is won, we should hit a breakpoint in this case. See if we can do a throw here. Perfect. And you can see that the match is won for the winning character. class 0, which it starts at 0, so that's the first character that was spawned, which is player 1. And then you saw the time dilation, and you probably see the match over as well. So there you go. So everything is working as intended here. We have this nice little update for our round win, match win logic, and we also have the rest of this advanced match flow episode here. So we have more updates we can make to make the code better, but your match flow system at this point is fully finished to the point where you can use it for whatever you'd like. Again, you can always upgrade it, but at this point, it's up to you what you want to do with it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. That's all I've got. So I'm Shawnthebro. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. There's more for myself on the channel than anything else you can do, and I really appreciate it. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership and Patreon members and supporters. Thank you guys for going the extra mile to help me out and see this series through to completion. I can't wait to see where we go with it, and I hope you guys all enjoy it. If you had any issues with this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. Completely free. Be happy to help you out with any of the problems that you had. Anyway, guys, like I said, that's all I got. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.